Good morning, everybody. We're gonna do a little free work media run through. I'm just gonna look at whatever topics have popped up on my X feed, whatever topics have popped up via news alerts on YouTube, and we'll just talk about it briefly. I just figured I have a few minutes before I have to get ready for work, my full-time job, and I figured why not jump in. So let's get started. I actually want to get started with a story that just struck me because of what's going on here in the U.S. versus how things are being handled over in China.
This wasn't just a case of fraud or gambling, it was a billion-dollar empire built on deception, trafficking, and death. A sprawling criminal network that turned a quiet border town in Myanmar into the global epicenter of cyber scams. Once a sleepy outpost, Laucaing was transformed into a fortress of vice, home to illegal casinos, drug trafficking, prostitution, and massive online scam centers. The Ming clan wasn't alone. They were one of four powerful families who controlled the region, running their own fiefdoms and making billions by exploiting desperate workers and unsuspecting victims across Asia. According to Chinese authorities, the Ming family's operations alone generated over 10 billion yuan, that's about 1.4 billion US dollars, through their gambling and telecommunications fraud businesses. Military junta, under heavy pressure from Beijing, launched a crackdown in Shan State. Hundreds of suspects were detained, and the Ming family, once untouchable, suddenly found themselves out of power. China demanded extradition, and Myanmar handed over dozens of gang leaders,
Just want to
including
play
Shan
this
State.
part over
Pressure
again.
from Beijing, the downfall began in late 2023 when Myanmar's military junta, under heavy pressure from Beijing, launched a crackdown in Shan State.
Now, some of this might be the credibility of of the government versus the credibility of the government here. But I just want to read you. This also came up in Yahoo News. A Chinese court has sentenced 11 members of the notorious family that ran scam centers in Myanmar, which is former Burma, according to Chinese state media. Dozens of members of the Ming family were found guilty of conducting criminal activities, with many receiving lengthy jail sentences. The Ming family worked for one of the four clans that ran Myanmar's sleepy backwater town of Lakang, close to the border with China, and turned it into a hub for gambling. Now, Myanmar, as I understand, running these gangs were running in and out of like Cambodia and Myanmar, etc. There were also reports last year of people getting kidnapped when they would travel from like Vietnam into that region for tourists, being kidnapped and also ransomed. And a lot of like Chinese nationals were apparently, kidnapped for ransom. So the Chinese government took it seriously. And this is where you have like a contradiction, I believe, of perception versus reality. We have this perception that China doesn't value human life, and they don't value their population because it's so big. Well, they have 1 billion people, yet they care enough about people getting enslaved, some of whom are Chinese, some of whom are not, but they care enough about the fact that they have people running slave plantations and scamming people on their border and on the other side of their border. Now, again, maybe you say, well, they don't have the history of imperialism and all this. You can go through it. In our country, we have the same situation. We have slave plantations that were built here by Mexican drug cartels in California and in Oregon. This was reported by the Epic Times like 5 years ago. We have cartels that traffic slaves, traffic drugs, have been running huge swaths of the border. We have you know kidnapping rings, all kinds of stuff. And when our government gets pressured by the people to do anything about it, there's usually a political fight about it. The countries that we ask to help us with this problem, they don't want to cooperate, and they cajole us and say, "Well, you guys are you're pushing on our sovereignty, and no, we don't care about the border. It's more important that we protect, the rights of our drug cartels and etc." I mean, and I understand that sometimes we miss, right? We'll pick out the wrong people, or maybe we over enforce things against innocents. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I just want to point out the situation and how these two countries not only handle these things but also how they're perceived. Like the military junta in Myanmar willingly cooperates to go after this gang, basically. And this is at the behest of the Chinese government. In America, we ask the same thing. We don't get any cooperation. Our own citizens will shoot at ICE agents before helping. Our government, these guys, whether it's Zora Mandani or Keem Jeffries, or I mean, you see it all over the country. The two parties are fighting over illegal immigration, but even when it's not the individuals, because I think there's a lot of great individuals that are here that happen to be illegal. I've known some. So I'm not talking about the individuals right now. I'm just talking about like the gangs, right? Like the people who are buying guns, stabbing people, shooting people, enslaving people. Even those people, you have Americans who are psyoped into defending that. Like there's no limit to them because they think, well, if it's something that a Trump or a Republican wants to do, it must be bad. And trust me, they're right about a lot of issues. But this issue, when it comes to specifically like gang members, people who have abused people, hurt people, I just don't understand how you could defend that. Like, you could be anti war, but you could be pro drug cartel. Like, the drug cartels are as violent and as disruptive as any military force anywhere. Maybe with the exception of the US military. But I mean it's a little absurd that this situation comes up in China and how it's received, how it's handled. It's disturbing to me. And again, I'm not talking about individuals, okay? I'm talking about the handling of like gangs and violent gangs who are abusing not only their population but abusing our population. I don't understand that. I can't make that work. And I'm sorry if it bothers you, but I can't make that work. Okay. So now let's get into other news here. Um yeah, so well, Trump deploys National Guard. Look, you can't shoot at or target government agents who are doing, like, don't blame them even if you don't like what they're doing. Like, these people are doing a job, okay? They're doing a job, and I think you gotta remember, like, they have a life, they have a family, and they're just following the laws that are on the books. I think the greatest misconception about immigration argument is, why aren't you having a debate in Congress about how you should adjust the law? You know, why aren't you having a debate? The reason why is because the parties like the division. They like the division. That's the game. The Republicans pretend like they care, and the Democrats pretend like they don't, like they're defending the illegals. Both sides pick their spot and then they just ride it. But they don't really, I mean, all of wealthy people in America benefit from illegal immigration. It's their slave labor. I mean, I hope everybody understands that. Like, if you have a lot of illegals in the country, it's good for the rich because they have a whole class of people they can subjugate who can't go to the police. They can't fight them in court. It's a whole group of people for them to step on. I mean, they can't. They can't import slaves from Africa anymore. That's over. But they can import slaves who are illegals from whether it's Africa or South America. They could do that in droves. Like it's not a humanitarian thing for them. And the Republicans, they know, you know what? My voters might get hurt, but I think I can convince them that I'm on their side and then I can rail against the Democrats. Even though they're taking advantage of the same thing. You don't think they have illegal labor in like some of the industries in red states? You don't think that they're lying. These parties are lying. Focus on criminal gangs and don't and lay off the individuals. That would be my advice. Angela Merkel. Now this is just I mean, first of all, I don't know why anybody cares what she thinks. She created a monster bubble for the German economy and Germany's in ruins now. Um she comes off as like just so rude to me in some of these interviews. I mean, I think it's awesome that she had quote unquote success and Germany was, had a great economy, but like there was a bubble that was being built also. Over reliance on China, the slow soft erosion of the middle economy, but this is where I think she shows some of her colors, and I don't like it. So she says Poland and the Baltic states are responsible for the war in Ukraine. I don't know how any rational person could come to that conclusion. Poland Poland and the Baltic states are responsible. Their refusal to support the Minsk agreements led to the severance of diplomatic ties between Russia and the EU and then a full-scale war. So the Minsk agreements from 2014-15 are that's the reason that the Russians invaded the east again of Ukraine. Not because of the violence going on in the Donbass, not because of the administration in Ukraine that changed from 2014 all the way through 2022, not because of the soft coup that was done against the Ukrainian government, where a quote unquote pro Russia Ukrainian government was replaced by a pro EU government. Okay, none of those are the reasons. The reasons is Poland and the Baltic states. Now, why is she picking out Poland and the Baltic states? Well, one, she wants to deflect because Germany, France, Britain, they've all expressed a tremendous amount of support, endless support actually, for the war in Ukraine. And she wants to make sure that any blame for this conflict that she can come out with her people and look like some kind of hero. So Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, those are the countries to blame. Oh, and Poland. Those are the countries to blame for the war in Ukraine. Not Ukraine, not the United States, not the UK, not France, not Germany. Okay. Just a horrible, horrible take. Like as bad a take as it gets. Like I don't I don't know. Just really, really, really horrible. Kind of curious with some of the comments. Germans like to yeah. These agreements were meant to give Ukraine time. The people responsible for enforcing the Minsk agreements are those whose signatures appear at the bottom of it. Neither Poland nor the Baltics are in that group. Yeah, I mean the people are smarter than this. You're not fooling them. And also, when are these old politicians going to realize that traditional media doesn't work? Nobody cares what they think. America's airports, train stations should look like. I've seen so many posts like this. Guys, we have homeless people. Before we build train stations, let's feed the homeless. Let's house the homeless, get everybody employed, and feed the starving. Like we're not anywhere near ready for this. Okay, so let's cut the shit. All right. I mean that's I don't understand. Um, I don't know. I don't understand. Like we're not anywhere near that. And by the way, if we build a station like this, there'd be urine on the floor and freaking graffiti on the walls in 2 seconds. Those who committed these crimes should never lecture Russia about human rights. Well, that is true. I mean, everybody has committed atrocities. So I agree with this statement. Nobody has the high moral ground. No one. No one in any continent anywhere has moral high ground. We can there's history that shows conflict, enslavement, and complete irrational and destructive behavior by all groups at all times in history. So this was a comment. So Marge agreed. America can't do anything exceptional because most of our leaders are obsessed with continuing our war economy and funding foreign wars and regime change in foreign countries. I always vote no, but it will never change until the American people demand it. American people are demanding it, but our government ignores it. Now, what is she talking about? Glenn Greenwald had commented on this. What happens when you don't drain your national resources on fighting endless wars, bombing everywhere you see, and financing other countries' militaries in multiple wars? Colin Rugg had posted this is a story that's been going around for about a week, but he posted it. He's like a conservative commentator on here. China officially opens the world's tallest bridge, completing the project in under 4 years. Bridge features a restaurant at the top, blah blah blah. But here's the most important thing: this bridge cost $300 million. That's like literally instead of a fighter jet, they built the world's tallest bridge. Looks spectacular. It's an amazing tourist attraction. It's functional. I mean, I agree with all these posts, but where's the embarrassment from the Republicans and the others and the Democrats who run our country for not being able to achieve anything? You know, the bridge that was destroyed by that terrorist attack slash accident in Maryland is still in shambles. Maybe we could hire the people that built this to come build us a bridge. I also think there's something significant here. Glenn Greenwald is someone who's been a significant, independent media and reporter who's probably considered left wing, quote unquote. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is someone who's probably she was considered MAGA. I don't know if she's considered traditional right wing or not, but I mean, she's definitely more right leaning than anything. And they're saying the same thing. So whether we acknowledge it or not, there's a core tenet of MAGA and right wing people in America, not neocons, but MAGA right wing people, and a core tenet of left wing people, not psycho progressives who have no issue with war as long as it profits them and defends their people. But I'm talking about like the actual core constituents. They actually have the same comment. Like, oh, maybe we have a horrible foreign policy and a terrible direction for our country. I think that's great to see, and I hope more of that. And it's on us to project more of this and to unite rather than constantly divide and conquer. I've said it before, and I just want to say this very clearly. The curse of the Tower of Babel from the Bible is a comment on, and I was talking to actually a representative of the Republican Party yesterday at a street fair. They were trying to get me to vote for or to support some Republicans. I guess the governor's race and some other Republicans, and I made a comment to them that one of the curses in the Bible, the Tower of Babel, is a division of language, so that God separates the people by language so they can't come together and unite and build this tower. But I think it's a metaphor in some ways for cultural. Like if you're left leaning and right leaning, you're not supposed to get along. If you're a different religion or root for different sports teams or live in different parts of the country, there's all kinds of reasons to divide. But the core belief systems and the core needs of the people are the same. And this is a great example of cross pollination of people agreeing 100%. We need more of that. China, Japan, Singapore make New York look like slums. Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are. I mean, if you I know a lot of people on here, just like to retweet and make same comments about, the cities. New York has some beautiful places, but it's not as safe as these other places. And certainly it's extremely expensive. Although Singapore is the most expensive, I think it's more expensive probably than New York. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, they're not going to have this in New York. They're not going to build anything like this. The rich people of New York don't take the subway. There's no incentive for them to pour private investment into trains. The only way you'll ever have a a Singapore, China looking um what do you call it, infrastructure in the US is if you allow it to be privatized. Of course, there's dangers with that, but you'd have to allow it to be privatized. If you had Trump International or some other huge building company to take over the subway stations, and then you had a private transportation company to take over the trains, then you would have this. Like the private sector in America is where the capital is, and that's where the ingenuity is. Unfortunately, that doesn't work in the long run because of how the failure of like the connection of the people through the system because we have a lot of cronyism. But in theory, if you really wanted to build something like this, you'd have to privatize our train system. You can't, our public sector can't do this, and it would turn into a dump after a year anyway because there'd be so many people, homeless people, and people like just destroying it and all that. It's just a totally different world. The city of Berlin now has more foreigners than all of China. Yeah, I've seen this post a couple times. Um, Okay, so she's saying this sack of bleep Mamdani will destroy New York. Wake the f up, New York. What? Why? What is he saying in this rally?
This city, across the country, they've asked me, what does it mean that you are Muslim? What does your faith mean to you? And I tell them about my grandparents, Yusuf, ancient.
See, I don't want to jump on him just because he's Muslim talking to Muslims. That's not fair. That's just not fair. There have been Muslims living here for a long time, and Muslims are not inherently a problem. Every religion has there's people of all kinds who are good and bad. So if you're just saying like, oh, he's going to ruin New York because he's socialist or Muslim, I actually don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I mean, New York's been ruined already, and it has not, and it's been run by Jews, Christians. It's been run by blacks, Italians. It's been run. I mean, every group in the world has had a shot to run New York, and New York's a dump. So, come on, like that's not the reason. If you think his policies won't work, I have made a video going through some of his platform and my questions for him, my questions about his policies. But I don't think it's fair to just take a clip of him talking to Muslims and say, "Well, there you go. He's going to ruin New York." I disagree with that. Again, we're talking about the bridges. You know, America used to be able to do this. Yeah, I mean that's fair. America, look, America up through the 50s was China. I don't, a lot of Chinese people probably don't realize this because I'm sure they don't know a lot about America, in the 50s, but their government knows. Um, there was a paper put out in 2015 from the Chinese government. I'll have to find it, and it was just a review on what makes China work, and it talked a lot about the Chinese taking some of what the Japanese had done, taking what the Americans had done, and even to an extent what the Germans had done before, and using their ingenuity, their infrastructure focus, um, and becoming a supplier of the world. This was all stuff that they just took from the United States. It's not new. I mean, China is a much older society, but this version of it, the US used to be the world's supplier of steel. The US used to be the world's supplier of a lot of consumer goods. The US used to be, the one they build the world's tallest building. They build the world's first this kind of bridge, that kind of bridge. The largest highway system, the large railroad network, the largest subway system. Like this was common in America. America was everything you hear about China today. America was that, and we got away from it. And I think the the over financialization and politicalization of America, especially in the '60s, was a huge transition point for the United States. It started in 1913 when our country really was taken over by the banking system because of the creation of the Fed. That connected us to an international banking system and gave away all the sovereignty of the United States. But even with that, we were still on a gold standard, which meant some restrictions on capital investment, and then like printing money. You couldn't just print all the money you wanted. But after the '60s, and during the '60s, you had this transition: the war on poverty, war on drugs, the war on everything, and that really those things became almost like a joke because the war on poverty led to a lot of poverty. The war on drugs led to a lot of drugs. It led to a lot of innocent people being hurt, being prosecuted. And you also, while you had those wars, you had the Vietnam War. So you're fighting a social cause war, but at the same time, you're fighting an actual war in Vietnam, which nobody here wanted, and got a lot of people killed, and just was a total train wreck. And then in the early '70s, Nixon officially cuts ties with the Bretton Woods Agreement, kills that off, and then suddenly now you can print as much money as you want. You have the replacement of the gold standard with the petrodollar, which is like an informal agreement. And the United States becomes what it is now, a debtor nation, which has a tremendous amount of infrastructure issues, can't build much of anything, and has a drug addicted, impotent society that can't keep up with its birth rates, and people can't even afford to have kids. People can't afford to live. People can't buy the same things their grandparents bought. We're progressing. We have an abundance of stuff, and people are getting poorer. Goods are costing more. I mean, this country's falling apart. And we're looking at a country across the world whose system we critique all the time, but yet they're able to do this. So, yeah. What is this? 2 days after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, FIFA, UEFA has suspended Russian clubs and internet and national teams indefinitely. 2 years of Israel's genocide in Gaza. FIFA cannot solve geopolitical. Oh, well, that's fair. That's a good point. Um, yeah, I mean, Russia doesn't have the influence in the West that Israel has. That's probably the lightest way of saying it. Israel is connected to the banks, to the wealthy people in these countries, and Russia is not. So that's why that happens. Um, China has become the world's biggest wind power country that accounts for over half of the world's total. Very interesting. So people who don't understand what's happening, China, with its incredible power grid infrastructure expansion, have no idea how far behind the curve the USA is. China produces more than double the total annual power of the USA. That's a great point. Um, it takes the USA about 15 years to permit, plan, and build a nuclear power facility like the Westinghouse. China does the same thing in 1/4 of the time. China has every type of energy, every type. Meanwhile, the United States, we argue, we have EPA studies, we have our two pathetic, impotent political parties, and everybody with an opinion. Meanwhile, the United States has a grid who's not supplied, who's undersupplied, and the cost of everybody's electricity has gone through the roof. And people, and this is something that's coming up in a lot of political races that are coming up, but the core problem is that we're not diversifying our energy and expanding the grid. It's really a power grid that was built like 100 years ago and now is being squeezed dry because you have data centers that are sucking off a lot of energy and what's happening is these a lot of tech companies are building their own small nuclear reactors in order to have their own energy sources. Meanwhile, regular people are just stuck with high prices. And the difference also is that the uh, the Chinese, when they do wind and solar, they do it right. We don't. So I don't. So even though we're quote unquote ahead in AI now, that gap's going to close very quickly because China has almost infinite power compared to we do, or compared to us, and they don't even have the natural resources we have. They're just better at sourcing it. Just a more efficient country. This is the lead up to. Okay, it's a bridge. A lot of China stuff in my in here. I don't know if that's just bad algorithm or what. 20 CIA and FBI insiders confirmed that Barack Obama and former CIA director orchestrated the entire Russia hoax and then hid it in the CIA. Yeah, I've seen this come up a lot, but here's the thing nothing's going to happen to him because the optics of arresting Obama or sanctioning him or anything like that, it's not going to happen. I mean, he faked a hoax. I mean, this is according to what they're saying. They know that he was behind the creation of a false report that led to a investigation, which led to um, the president of the United States being unable to work with a foreign country, which led to a war, and millions of people are dead now because of a war in Ukraine that would have never happened if you didn't have the Russia hoax. And meanwhile, nothing's going to happen to Obama. Now, if this happened in another country, there would be consequences, but nothing's going to happen to him because the population is so psyoped into their slave mentality. There's no way that they're gonna stand up and cheer for him being punished. So no, it's not gonna nothing's gonna happen. Japan's new prime minister uh claims she was inspired by Margaret Thatcher and ran huge military spending and a hawkish position against China. She's another pathetic puppet of the United States. Well, you know, I don't know if I want to call her a pathetic puppet. First of all, let's see what she does. Look, it's okay for China to be for China, but Japan can't be for Japan. I mean, I don't think it. If she just copies and does anything that America wants, you can call her a puppet. But let's see what she does because Japan has problems, and she was not elected to be a puppet of the United States because the United States has the same problems that Japan has in a lot of ways. So I don't think that's why she was elected. If anything, she may come off as like MAGA, and you think like, well, that means that she's a puppet. But in reality, when you're actually MAGA in your country, that means you're more of a nationalist. And if you're more of a nationalist, that means that you're doing things that's best for your country, even if it works against another country like the U.S. That's the cooperative agreement between nationalist countries versus imperialists and globalists. So I don't know. We'll have to see what she does. But she wasn't elected because she's just going to kowtow to the U.S. The people there are expecting something different. If she doesn't perform, she'll be in trouble. Eyewitness recorded another failed pro-EU NATO coup attempt in Georgia. Okay. I'll be publishing what I saw. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. The EU, you have them coming out. You're blaming the Baltics. You're blaming Poland. They're interfering in They believe in democracy, but they interfere in every election. In the South, in the near the Black Sea and the Mediterranean and all that, they interfere with every election because they don't want people to vote for leaders in their country that are just going to support their own country and potentially have a peaceful relationship with Putin. That's the worst thing in the world in Western Europe. is to have a peaceful relationship with Putin. Absolutely ridiculous. Coming next week, I'm dropping truth bombs all over the internet. My new anti-socialism video series filmed in New York City will make Mamdani's cheesy propaganda look like amateur hour. If it's rooted in facts, go ahead. But if it's just, you know, just him being a socialist, that's not really enough. That doesn't do anything. Ilhan Omar is on the verge of tears and says she can't be deported because she's an American citizen. She can be denaturalized, then deported. We have I mean, she married her brother, which was a little weird. Also, I have some questions about her, and I'm curious if anybody has opinions. Is it true? I mean, for what I've been seeing, and I did a little research, her father was involved with the Somalian government and was apparently like a ruthless executor of the government's will against, a lot of people, killed a lot of innocent people, and that she's here fleeing prosecution, not persecution. So I have some concerns about her. I wonder if that's why she's crying. I don't know. It's a little scary with her. We need a European Union that returns to its roots, a community of nations, not a supranational entity. Yeah, I mean, look, the European Union's been a train wreck. For those who think like, this, it's almost like a Trotskyite um ideal, right? You have a very socialist mentality of the European Union, but they've completely failed. They've become warmongering. They're very imperialist. They're imperialist against their own region, and they absolutely endorse war against Putin, which is, you know, doesn't really adhere to the principles of non-intervention and creating a coalition for safety. So I think seeing a revolt in Central Europe, it's sort of history repeating itself. Central Central and Eastern Europe have never really been able to get on the same page as Western Europe without force, right? The world wars were done because the Western Europe didn't like Eastern Europe and Central Europe, and the Russians were sort of played into that. But the British and the French, when they got done fighting each other, realized that they could control all of Europe, and they do because of the banks, along with the Swiss, and then obviously the United States. They could control all of Europe by subjugating them, economically and whatnot. And Central Europe has woken up. Hungary, Poland, uh, you know, uh, Czechia, even Italy to an extent. Spain is starting to change. You're just seeing it. You're seeing Romania. Even though the elections were fiddled with, um, people, and it's not. I'm not saying like that conservatism is the answer. It's not about conservatism. It's about our people in these countries being supported by their government. And if you're beholden to Brussels, there's an inherent conflict of interest. Let's see. Imagine in some heavy industries where energy accounts for 30+% of total costs in a price sensitive global market, it's a no brainer. Many Western companies cannot compete anymore, especially after decoupling from cheap Russian energy. Deindustrialization is accelerating for the collective West. So, what is this? Energy prices in Europe. Wow. Look at Germany and Italy and the UK. Oh, ouch. Yeah. I mean, look, expensive energy. Look at Russia, bro. Russia and China. Look how cheap their energy. And you know what's sad? What's crazy? This country has resources. This country doesn't have the same resources. And look how much cheaper it is for them versus over here. And we're getting killed too, but it's even worse over here. That's terrible. Ex Muslim explains that Muslims using Taqiyya to conquer Europe and America is now face the same. Warns New York. Yeah, I mean, pretending to. Yeah, so for those who don't know, it's the law in the Quran that allows for Muslims to lie to, especially to non-Muslims, in order to spread Islam, so they can like pretend per their current. I mean, look, I don't think that's. I think lying, politicians lying, or people lying in order to get what they want is pretty normal, unfortunately. So I could see that. I mean, there are some Muslims who are not lying, who are telling the truth, and there's some who aren't. But it's like, again, I don't want to group everybody into one collective on this. It's just that there are politicians who are lying, who are not upholding the basic moral social values that are already built into some of these Western countries. And when they don't do that, and it seems to be in the direction of protecting certain ethnic groups, that's when you create the door opening for this sentiment to seep in. And that's what's happened. So you have to understand that and address that if you want to be taken seriously. Blah, 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 blah. If Ukraine uses U.S. Tomahawk missiles, we will be at war with. Yeah, it's just not a good look. Douglas McGregor has been on this the whole time. He's been really, really good about this, understanding the realities and the benefit of peace, and he's very good. That's why they would never let him back in the Pentagon. He would never be allowed because he speaks the truth. Blah, blah, blah. Muslims in New York planning to celebrate the death of 1,200 people on October 7th. Flood New York. Flood New York City for. Oh. Yeah, I mean, is this real? I don't know if this is real or not. I guess we'll find out tomorrow, right? If it's real, I think that's not good. You can't celebrate people being murdered. That's not cool. Kiev after 2 years of Russian bombing. Gaza after 2 weeks of Israeli bombing. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. White liberal Northsiders didn't open their doors for illegals in Chicago. They all flooded the South Side and have become a burden on the black Southsiders. Yeah, I mean this is something. I know people who are sensitive to illegal immigration who can't have an adult conversation. You need to understand something. There are poor people in this country, black people like myself. I mean, I'm not poor, but I will say there are black people in this country, black and Hispanics, who understand that the burden of allowing millions of undocumented people into your country falls on the shoulders of the people who are struggling the most in this country. The people who are organizing the rallies and who are organizing the violence against ICE and who are screaming in the hallways of city halls and the state assemblies and all that. These are people with money, and they don't have to deal with any of the problems that come with taking a poor neighborhood and making it poorer, taking a crowded school and making it more crowded, introducing multiple languages where people can't communicate and the teachers are overwhelmed. Like, any issue that negatively impacts poor people that comes with illegal immigration is not going to be impacted negatively on the communities of the people who are driving those policies. They just want the slave labor. That's all it's about. And there's another aspect that if the biggest benefactor of reducing illegal immigration would be poor people and young people, because then they would have to be employed to replace the workforce that's being lost, and then that would drive up wages for those workers. Again, I don't want to target individuals. I would prefer to stick to the criminal gangs, but when you see the behavior from people like I see this in New York too, but the white liberal Northsiders in Chicago, same thing. They're all for illegal immigration, but they don't deal with any of the blowback. There's still negative parts of it. And if you don't recognize and are not sensitive, it's just because you don't care about these poor black people. You don't care what happens in their communities. Now, overall, the system shouldn't be so sensitive. You should have a great immigration policy and you should have an economic system that works for everybody. That's another problem. And I know a lot of socialists would say, see, the bigger problem is, yes, I agree there's a bigger problem. But before you can get to that problem, how are you going to help the people that are in need now? So it's just something to think about. And this is probably gonna have to be the last one because I do have to get going. Oh yeah, Ursula, the hero. To secure jobs, we must make doing business in Europe easier. The digital euro will make it simpler for companies as well as consumers. Oh boy. Yeah. I trust everything she says. What a fucking clown she is. Just sit there in Europe with your fancy fucking paintings and your fancy halls and watch yourself get on your knees for the Asian century that's going to stomp all over you because you have no idea what's coming. So what is he saying? What many Western-based analysts don't realize China's household consumption. Going to the hospital is cheaper than going to eat. Going to university in China is cheap. 93% of Chinese folks own their own home, so there are fewer people renting, which is countered counted as consumption in other countries. Food and clothing are much, much, much more affordable. In short, it's just more affordable. Um, all of that is true, but that doesn't change the question of if you are producing a lot of goods and services and your customers are becoming poorer and can no longer support those goods and services. You need to be able to support those goods and services, or you're going to have businesses in China go out of business, or your dollar, your yuan the renminbi is going to have to become a more powerful currency, even inside of BRICS, in order to support the businesses that are going to have to be more reliant on Chinese consumption and BRICS consumption versus Western consumption. Because besides the blockades, Western countries are getting poorer, so they're not going to. The consumers there just don't have the money to buy things. So if you even if what you're saying is true, and I think Jason Smith is right, one of the issues here is that that doesn't help with fixing the consumption needs, right? All of the businesses in China still need someone to buy their goods and services. And you're going to have to either adjust your currency or find a market because in America, people are just getting poorer. In Europe, people are getting poorer. So if you're not getting the consumption and volume there that you were getting 20 years ago, then you're going to have to increase the value of your currency so that when internally people purchase things, it accounts for more money per person. But on the other hand, again, China is dealing with a different system. So when they sell in America, you're dealing with a quote unquote capitalist market economy versus when you're dealing with China, you're dealing with quasi. And their people are not gonna starve, and but you will have businesses that will close if they can't make enough money. That's true in any country, unless the government just chooses to prop them up, just literally by giving them funds. They're going to have to find a way. These businesses, if you have like 100 businesses doing the same thing, and suddenly they can't sell to the United States in the same volume, the internal consumption has to go up. So go up by number, not just by share of GDP. It's going to have to go up by literal like charging more per person, and some of that might just be the value of your currency going up. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a complicated issue. It's not a crippling problem for China today. It's actually it's a funny thing. This is only a problem, and this is something that Jason Smith doesn't say, but this would help his argument. This consumption problem that Western analysts talk about is only a problem for China if Western countries don't consume Chinese products and services. So this is a situation where China would want the West to be rich so that they can sell to them. And the analysts are like defending their own region by critiquing China's consumption, but China's consumption by share of GDP is dependent on their ability to export. They're an export economy, they're a producer. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this rundown and some of the news today. I'll continue to do this as often as I can and talk about any issues, any topics you guys want to bring up. But I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, share the channel. Again, I do this on my own. I do it for my own therapy, my own opinions. It's not professional. I don't get paid. And, for me to be able to continue to do it, I just really need at least some support in terms of sharing and liking. That would be awesome. So I greatly appreciate it. Please comment below. And thank you so much. I hope everybody has a great day. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you so much.